Trials Unit at the University of York, this is the Research Room. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Research Room with me, Lucy Ather.
And me, Janine Healy.
And today in the Research Room, we've got something very different, I think, from what we've done before.
Very different.
Yeah, we've got a special episode. So we've not only left the health sciences, we've left sciences altogether, and we've gone over to the law school.
I know.
Yeah. Wow.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Different.
Definitely. We are joined today by Samantha Holmes from York Law School and the Centre for Applied Human Rights. Welcome to the Research Room.
Thank you very much. Hi, nice to be here.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. So Sam, just to kick us off, could you introduce yourself?
Of course, yes. I am Samantha Holmes. I'm a research associate based at the York Law School and the Centre for Applied Human Rights. And I research human rights and humanitarian law, particularly in times of armed conflict. I'm part of the Beyond Compliance Consortium, which is undertaking a research programme into strategies for minimising harm and need in armed conflict. Within this project, my research focuses particularly on mental harm caused in war and looking at how it can be reduced or prevented through the utilisation of international law or by looking beyond the law.
Wow. Yeah. No, it sounds very, very interesting. Quite different from what we do, but then focused on mental health. Obviously, we care a lot about health, but that all sounds great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
So you mentioned the Beyond Compliance Consortium.
Yes.
So is that the name of your project?
No. Yes
No?
and no. So the Beyond Compliance Consortium, or as we call it for short, BCC,
Yeah.
is the name of the group of organisations that are undertaking this research. So there's nine of us. There's 3 academic institutions and 6 human rights and humanitarian organisations.
Wow.
So that's our brand name, so to speak, and that's what people would associate with our research is it's BCC. The actual name of the research programme is much less used. It is Building Evidence on Promoting Restraint by Armed Actors.
Right.
By armed.
Hence, So armed actors, which would cover kind of military actors or other non-state armed groups. So anyone who would be potentially a fighting party in an armed conflict.
Right. Okay.
So we're not talking actors on the stage.
No.
No. No. Definitely not. Very different kind of actors.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that an acronym or is that?
Do you have an acronym?
Well, we have an acronym of Beyond Compliance Consortium,
BCC.
so we're BCC, not to be confused with the BBC, which has or blind carbon copy.
No, definitely not that.
No, we won't.
Okay.
So we can't rate.
We
anything.
can't really rate BCC, can we?
No.
No.
So you're actual. So it's not. There's not one piece of research you're doing. It's a whole.
Exactly. Yeah, we call it a research program because it's bigger than a single project.
Yeah. So you're part of a big team, multinational team.
Yep.
Sounds like
Global.
Global. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Fantastic.
So, in a nutshell, can you describe your project?
I can try. So the BCC, we are a co-productive socio-legal research partnership between 3 universities and 6 human rights and humanitarian organisations. We're funded with UK international development from the UK government, and we are 2 years into a 3-year research programme that is theoretical, empirical and operational. Our research centres local communities' everyday lived experiences of armed conflict and aims to ascertain what strategies have the best potential to prevent, reduce and respond to harm and need arising in armed conflict. So we're conducting qualitative research into 9 case study countries, all different armed conflicts across the globe, and also collecting quantitative data for a historical database. So within this broader research programme, one of the key thematic areas of harm and need that has emerged and that is my research focus is conflict-related mental harm.
Okay. So you're looking at how much mental harm is caused during conflict?
Yeah, so particularly I'm looking, obviously mental harm's caused in many different ways throughout an armed conflict. Just even not living in the conflict, but watching it on social media could cause mental harm.
Oh, right, yeah.
But the focus that I'm looking at for my research is mental harm caused by an attack. So that's an attack by one armed actor against another.
Yeah.
And that's because we have rules that govern the amount of force that can be used and the types of impacts that can be caused through the international humanitarian legal framework.
Yeah.
So we're looking specifically at that mental harm that's caused from an attack. And it's not a quantitative study to see kind of how much is caused, but it's more about understanding what are the triggers, how does it manifest, and what are the best ways to stop that from happening.
I see.
Wow.
So it's quite topical, isn't it, at the moment?
Very, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you're looking at how much mental harm is caused by a kind of attack, and that would be, like if a city is bombed, for example, you want to
Exactly.
know how much mental harm is being caused.
And it's to anybody, not just people that are it's people that are involved in it. It doesn't have to be actual people participating in the war.
Yeah. So again, mental harm can be caused on what we would call civilians, so people who aren't involved in the armed conflict, but also it can, of course, have impacts on people who are involved, who are combatants or soldiers. Our focus, because when you look at mental harm in the previous research, there has been so much done on soldiers. A lot from returning American soldiers from Vietnam. This is kind of when the conversation around PTSD really started.
I was going to say, you think of PTSD.
What is PTSD? Sorry.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
So there's been quite a lot said about soldiers and the mental harm that they experience. So we're shining the light a little bit more on what we would call civilians, but we say this open-ended because civilians, again, is it's a binary concept really that doesn't fit in everyday lived reality, because you will have some armed actors who wear multiple hats. You would say they might contribute in some way to the conflict, whether that's through political support of a party. So civilians don't always traditionally look like you would imagine.
Yeah.
And of course, you'll have some vulnerable groups of fighters, such as child recruits. Female combatants can be particularly vulnerable in certain circumstances. So it's vague in our wording. We won't say civilians, but we want to make sure we're capturing everybody who needs the light shining on their experiences of mental harm.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess when you think about it, it is a lot more complicated. It's not just black and white. You're either a civilian or like a soldier. It's very...
Yeah, exactly. And when you live in close communities in some of these armed conflicts, you will, even some people will conceive that relationships, friendships with people who are combatants could make you essentially guilty by proximity, and therefore a legitimate target of a military attack. So it can get quite convoluted.
Yeah. Gosh, it's complicated.
It is, isn't it?
I don't know why I would expect it not to be
complicated. I don't know. And you're trying to find out the effect. It's how is it linked to law in a way?
So we didn't kind of go into the concept of this project thinking about mental harm. That's something that has emerged through the empirical data we've done so far. We went in thinking, what are the priorities for harm and need? And, what do people want us to know? And what do they want us to do? And mental harm has emerged. The reason how this links to law is because there is a legal loophole, in my opinion. As I mentioned before, we have rules of law, which are called international humanitarian law.
Yeah.
And they provide basically an upper limit on the types of violence, sometimes the methods, tactics, specific weapons that can be used. And when you look at the legal framework from the perspective of mental harm, I don't believe that it does enough to protect mental health in armed conflict of civilians and others. So and this links really into the title of Beyond Compliance, so it might make a bit more sense now. But one of the main approaches in this sector is to say the importance of compliance with the law.
Yeah.
If you comply with the rules that are there, there's less harm. War becomes less violent and there's less unnecessary suffering if you comply with the law.
Yeah.
But we approached this project by saying, yeah, that's very true. You have to, compliance with the law is really important for this work. But it's also not enough on its own, because it's only so far that compliance with the law can take us. And that's what our research is showing, that even if you have 100% compliance with every armed actor, war is still inherently dangerous.
Yeah.
There is still going to be mental harm and other types of harm that are caused. And these rules of law, they allow certain harm to occur. You can, according to the rules of law, kill a civilian. You can harm a civilian, provided that it is proportionate to the military advantage that is foreseen to be gained from the action.
Yeah.
So this is why we're saying, yes, we need compliance, but we also need to look beyond compliance. We can't be restricted by the framework of what the law says. If our priority is to reduce suffering in armed conflict, then we need to look at what suffering is happening, almost forget what the law says should or shouldn't be happening, and look at how can we address that suffering. Because if we look at it just through the law, we miss things that fall outside of that legal framework, such as mental harm.
Yeah. So you're trying to think of what else you can do beyond changing the law or trying to make people comply with the law. You want to see what else you can do.
Exactly. So whether that's, some of the recommendations could be, I say this, we're early on, but, that we need new laws or better implementation of the laws or new policy, but it could be extra legal things, more capacity bridging with armed actors. It could be about providing support for local communities for their own kind of self-protection in armed conflict. So it's really kind of seeing compliance as one tool in a much bigger toolbox of strategies of how we can help people and prevent suffering in armed conflict.
Yeah. And could you give us some examples of, because I think a lot of people won't really know about the specific kind of laws around war. I didn't really know. I think I know that you can't use chemical weapons and maybe things like that around physical harm. But are there any laws around mental harm at the moment?
So, as I mentioned, the international humanitarian legal framework does provide some upper limitations. Really, it's the line that you can't cross in war, and there are certain weapons that can't be used. There are certain things that can't be targeted, such as schools and hospitals, and they're classed as civilian objects. Is the framework is the phrase that's used in the law. So there are some protections against mental health. In particular, there are quite robust protections around intentionally causing mental harm. So an armed actor isn't permitted to intentionally cause terror, to intentionally inflict torture through mental torture.
Right.
But the law becomes a lot less straightforward and a lot more unclear when you think about mental harm that's not intended. So that's what you might call incidental mental harm. Sometimes you might hear it called collateral mental harm. Now, there are legal protections against incidental harm more broadly. So one that I will mention is the principle of proportionality. This is the balancing act between how much harm to civilians can we inflict versus the military objective. So if you have a military goal and you're aware that your attack might cause injury to a certain number of civilians in the area, can you justify that?
Right. Okay.
And it's a balancing act, really. It's challenging. Now, the wording of the law says, when I'm talking about harm to civilians here, it says death of civilians, injury to civilians, or damage of civilian objects, which is schools and hospitals, etc., residential areas. Injury is vague.
Right, okay.
And it has traditionally been interpreted to be physical injury. And in practice, right now, I think the vast majority, maybe with the exception of NATO, if we want to be generous, perceives that injury only considers physical injury.
Okay.
I see.
So some academics, myself included, are of the view that injury could be and should be interpreted to include psychological or mental injury.
Right.
Oh,
okay. Thank
that's
you.
good.
Yeah.
I understand now, yeah.
So how an attack, or for example, a missile, might impact a civilian's mental health is not currently being considered in those decisions of attack by armed actors. So we can see that there is a gap here that's leaving individuals vulnerable to mental harm. So this is where the law comes into our project, really. It's seeing what's capable within the law, how far the law can go, and when we need to maybe put the law aside and look at other avenues and options for reducing harm and need.
So then is the kind of aim of the project, will it be to produce some kind of guidelines or influence policymakers, things like that?
So we hope that our research findings will bring attention to overshadowed but profound experiences of suffering, but also to provide policymakers, armed actors even, with evidence-based recommendations of steps that they can take to reduce suffering in armed conflict. It could be to recommend areas of law where the implementation of the law needs to be improved. So, for example, my interpretation of the principle of proportionality, that would be one recommendation I would make, is that we should be implementing it as if it includes psychological harm. And it could be encouraging policy reform within military policy. So, for example, they might have certain systems in place, codes of conduct that soldiers are required to fulfill. It could be providing support to an organization to improve accountability when those codes of conduct aren't followed. It could be recommendations around humanitarian aid policy and the types of services or support that would be most beneficial to certain communities. And really informing the channeling and shaping of appropriate funding, or indicating where the development of interventions is needed to alleviate this type of suffering.
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways that this could be done, really, lots of potential outcomes.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah. But ultimately you want mental harm to be considered as much as physical harm.
Exactly. I think I would say that's my main goal for me personally, not the broader project, is that we bring more attention to mental harm where I think it's needed. And then hopefully we find steps that we can take to make sure that mental harm can be prevented. And rather than just responded to, rather than just keep flooding conflict areas with mental health support and first aid, actually think of ways that we can prevent it from happening in the first place.
Oh yeah, no, that sounds like
prevention's a good
much
thing.
better idea.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Wow, well, it sounds like such an interesting project.
Yeah. It is. So how did you become interested in war and international human rights then?
Interested in war sounds a bit sadistic, doesn't it? So I have a legal background. I studied law at undergraduate, and aside from one module that was on human rights, to be quite frank, I hated it.
Oh, really?
So I think that's made me quite a critical legal scholar.
Oh, I see.
Coming from a place where I didn't like the law all that much. So that has led me to like to look at areas where the law can be improved. And I think war is one of the ways in which we see that the law fails every day.
Yeah.
Also, my first human rights job was in Cambodia. So I lived in Cambodia for 4 years.
Wow.
And although I was there long after the end of their civil war, I saw the first-hand impact that war can have on communities for generations. So my research area has grown out of wanting to help in whatever small way that I can to help prevent atrocities like the Cambodian genocide from ever happening again.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, yeah, that is pretty impressive, yeah.
Ambitious.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I believe in you. You can do it.
So after living in Cambodia, this is your first project in academia, is that correct?
Yes, it is. So when I returned from Cambodia, I came back to do my master's in international human rights law and practice here at York.
I see. The connection now.
Yes. And then after my master's, I stayed on as a research associate. So it was a big change for me from my previous human rights legal work, which was mostly for NGOs, for human rights organizations, grassroots human rights organizations, and some international NGOs working on... Sorry.
NGOs, what are those?
Non-governmental organizations.
Sorry.
Are they like charities and things like that?
Yeah. So it was a big change for me moving from working for human rights non-governmental organizations in Cambodia, where I was mostly involved in advocacy and research. But academic research is very different from charity sector research, is something that I've learned over the last 3 years. But yes, so then I started my role here at York as a research associate, working on this area of human rights and humanitarian law research. I did a short research project into children in armed conflict and the grave violations that they experience.
Wow.
And then we won the funding for this project for the Beyond Compliance Consortium, which has been about 2.5 years now since we started, and we have 1 year to go.
Oh.
So why are we doing this now?
Well, our project responds to the very depressing current reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
There are 14% of the global population live in a conflict-affected area.
Really?
14%?
14%? Wow.
Gosh, that's a lot.
And we see the laws of war respected less, and we see more armed conflicts erupting. So there are over 130 armed conflicts currently ongoing globally.
Really? Wow.
I say that again. How many?
130.
I thought I misheard. Crikey.
Yeah, that's a lot. I would
That's
have
a lot.
guessed 5. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that many. Wow.
And the people who pay the price in these armed conflicts are the individuals and the communities that aren't involved in the fighting. Last year, over 240,000 people around the world were killed in conflict-related violence.
Wow.
That is a lot.
Yeah, that's awful.
A scary
Yeah,
high
it is
number.
scary. That's so high.
If you look at Gaza alone, over 20,000 children were killed since the conflict exacerbated in 2023.
Yeah. Wow.
And these figures, as depressing as they are, they only represent deaths. They don't even begin to touch on other less visible forms of suffering, not injuries, not mental harm, anything else that's not as tangible or visible.
Yeah. And I'd imagine that you'd kind of maybe have figures on the deaths, and then you might have figures on physical injury. But I imagine the mental harm would be even bigger, and that would be really difficult to put a number on that.
Yeah, mental harm is very challenging to quantify. We do have some statistics.
Oh, okay.
The latest estimate by the World Health Organization is that more than 1 in 5 people affected by conflict experience a mental health disorder. And I say disorder specifically. It's not a term that I would use intentionally in my research, because it limits the experiences of mental harm to those that conform to certain disorder categories that you might
I
see.
imagine those are people who've been diagnosed with something, but there'll be way, way more who haven't been diagnosed with
that's right,
an actual disorder, but they're definitely still...
Exactly. Things that might be sub-threshold, or that might not... Even when you look at the different cultural experiences of mental harm, they don't always align with what we in the Western world perceive as a mental health disorder.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
So one key aspect of my research is that I'm taking a decolonial approach, and it's trying to shed these notions of mental health disorder and being limited by those diagnostic-based understandings of, for example, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and understanding that the experiences of mental harm that might occur in armed conflicts in various different social or cultural situations might not look how we expect it to.
Yeah.
And those experiences are likely to get lost from these numbers as well.
Yeah. So would that be like, in one country, you might have a certain set of sort of symptoms, I guess, that you would diagnose as PTSD, but that could be completely different somewhere else?
Yeah, exactly. So there are certain cultures, and I know Cambodia is one of them, where lots of mental harm will manifest as somatic symptoms, so physical body symptoms, despite it being a mental health issue. It might come through as chest pain or aches in the body in different areas, as headaches, as dizziness, whereas they're symptoms that we less see associated with certain mental health disorders in other parts of the world. But also our approach to mental health and mental health disorders particularly is very individualistic. We see it as an internal, singular experience. But in many different cultures, mental health is actually a very shared, communal, interconnected experience, particularly if you look at Indigenous communities where relationships between communities and even from the community to the environment, the living environment around them, is all entwined in their own mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So in certain circumstances like this, if you bring it back to the idea of making decisions around which attacks might be appropriate in conflict, in certain communities, damaging the land could have a greater mental health implication on, for example, an Indigenous community
if they
than
work
it would
on
on
the
another.
land, because it's important to the way they live.
Exactly. And it's sometimes these cultural nuances that get lost when we look at the law, because it is being interpreted in a very Western military manner.
Yeah.
Ah.
Wow. So you've got that whole area of it as well. You've set yourself quite a challenge, I think. You've got a lot going on. So how are you going to go about doing this then? How does the project work?
So our research is interdisciplinary. We include perspectives from law, from political science, international relations, social psychology, behavioral science. And we take a socio-legal approach, meaning that we analyze the law as it's written, interpreted and implemented, but also look at the broader social context around the law. And we employ a mixed method approach, which includes qualitative research through interviews and focus groups across 9 conflict case studies and a quantitative component. We have 9 case study countries that we are undertaking qualitative research within, and that's Afghanistan, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Myanmar, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, and Yemen.
Wow. Yeah, so quite a good spread.
It's a very
global,
big spread, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
To make sure we have a good geographical cross-section, but also they're diverse in the types of armed conflicts. Traditionally, you have 2 main types. You have international armed conflicts, traditionally between 2 states, and non-international armed conflicts, which is usually between either a state and a non-state armed group, or 2 different, or more even, different non-state armed groups. So amongst that list of case study countries, there is a mixture of geographies, but also different types, different actors, and also longevities of conflicts, some where they've had more recent exacerbations in the conflicts and they've been going on for decades.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So you want to try and get a really good mix.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in each of the case studies, we've interviewed people who are fighting in the conflict, so armed actors, including members of the military and members of other armed resistance groups, local civil society organizations and representatives, as well as international experts. So far across our 9 case study countries, we've held 522 interviews.
Oh, wow.
And 22 focus group discussions. And that's a total of over 620 participants.
Wow.
And this research is still ongoing.
Yeah. So you're interviewing sort of local people. Did you say local government people as well?
It depends. So sometimes members of the military, for example, will obviously be government representatives, but it's often very difficult to access. So I'm on the Myanmar case study, and in the environment in Myanmar, it's impossible to engage with the government or the military representatives. Whereas in our Ukraine case study, they will have interviewed and spoken with government representatives of the Ukrainian military. However, access for them to the Russian military is not possible.
Yeah. And are you what kind of questions are you asking people?
So we're collecting information on what harm and need means to them, what the priorities are for them in the armed conflict, for those who are living through it, and what strategies are best placed to reduce or prevent those harms and needs. So we will ask, for example, whether they engage. If we're speaking to a civil society organization, we might ask whether they engage with local armed groups, what they've found are successful ways of engaging with local armed groups, and how they can best support them to protect individuals. If we're speaking to a member of the military or an armed group, we might ask what their internal policies are, how they engage with the international humanitarian law framework, how they understand it and how they implement it. We might ask them specific questions about their policies, for example, on child recruitment, which is a big issue in Myanmar. and whether there are specific actions that they take in order to protect the civilian community in their areas.
Wow. And so obviously you're looking at the mental health, but the interviews will be about, not just about mental health, they're about all the different aims of the project. And then do you kind of take the mental health bits out of that for your project?
Yes, exactly. So I suppose I have two hats in this, in that I'm a member of the Myanmar research team, and I'm doing the data analysis for the full scope of the interviews. But also through my own kind of legal research, I've a specific interest in the mental harm, and so I will siphon some of the findings off, so we can have some thematic, hopefully across multiple case studies, findings on mental harm globally. But it's not been difficult to do so, because almost, if not every single interview that I have partaken in, mental harm was mentioned. And often it was mentioned as a priority, on an equal, if not greater, emphasis put on it than physical harm.
Oh, right. So you've actually done some of the interviews?
Yes, yeah. The field work took place in 2025.
Oh, right.
Right, okay. So you've got that sort of qualitative data. So where are you in the project now? Are you putting that data together? And
yes, so we're at the data analysis stage of our research on Myanmar. There's still a little bit of data collection being undertaken in some of the case studies, but for the majority, we're on to the data analysis stage. So we have some emerging findings from the data analysis.
Oh, so can we hear them then? Or are we allowed?
I can give you a sneak peek.
Oh, yay, an exclusive for the research room.
So one of the interesting observations that's come out of the research specifically on mental harm is that it has a very unique temporality. While most harm in war you might perceive as resulting from violence, so for example, you have an airstrike or a bomb and somebody is injured because of the shrapnel, etc. Mental harm can actually manifest even without that instigating violence. Just the anticipation or the fear of that violence can impact someone's mental health.
Right, yeah. Fear of living in a country that's in conflict.
Well, exactly. And in Myanmar, one of the biggest concerns here is of airstrikes. Because the military junta has been prolific in its use of airstrikes across the country. And many people are therefore living under the constant threat of airstrikes. And I want to share a brief quote from one of our interviewees, who shared that in some towns, they worry about airstrikes every day, every single hour, every single minute.
Wow.
Agree.
So it can cause a real emotional degradation, trauma responses. And for children in particular, it can impede their cognitive development.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Another type of anticipatory mental harm we see in Myanmar is around the fear of conscription. So that's conscription into the military or into an armed group, recruitment, you could say. There is a conscription law in Myanmar under the ruling government that makes it mandatory for people in a certain age group to join the military. And this has caused lots of mental harm. It's caused lots of displacement with people fleeing Myanmar, either into the rural areas of Myanmar or leaving the country altogether to avoid being recruited into the military. What I think is another really interesting aspect of mental harm that's emerged through this research is that it follows other harms, I like to say, like a shadow.
Oh.
So you have many different types of harm that you could experience in war: physical harm, mental harm, as we've mentioned, economic harm, digital harms that can occur in the digital sphere, environmental harm, for example. But mental harm uniquely, whilst it can be its own standalone category of an impact of for example, a mental health disorder like PTSD could emerge from just witnessing an act of war. It also has the capacity to accompany all those other different types of harm. In this way, we can say that it reverberates through other experiences of suffering. So, for example, the physical harm that might cause the death of an individual in an armed conflict could then cause severe mental harm to that individual's family, their dependents.
I see
And
what you mean.
therefore, almost as a secondary effect, you have this mental harm.
Yeah.
And the unique thing is that mental harm has the capacity to be this shadow for every other type of harm that occurs in armed conflict.
Yeah. I think the more you think about it, the more you realize mental harm is actually a lot bigger than the physical harm, because the physical harm can cause mental harm. So
Exactly.
It's like a bit of a ripple.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Another finding of our research is that conflict violence can cause slow or kind of accumulate mental harm through the erosion of socioeconomic circumstances. So,
what do you mean by that? You know I was going to ask that.
Yeah. So, mental harm can be inflicted almost as an external, but it also can be caused by the way that we live. And in armed conflict, life is often very difficult, or can be. And the socioeconomic circumstances, such as whether the individual has shelter and food, education, their living standards, the community cohesion, when those things are damaged, it can be an underlying determinant of poor mental health. So when we look at the causes of mental harm in armed conflict, we can't forget those slower causes, those socioeconomic influences on mental well-being. It's not just that bombs are being dropped. It's not those bigger, kind of more obvious causes of mental harm. For many, it's the everyday reality of living in conflict. And we can provide mental health support. You could give mental health consultations to individuals, but if you're sending them back out into a community where they can't afford to feed themselves, then that support isn't going to be effective.
Yeah. It's the whole disruption to their lives.
Yeah, exactly. And one interviewee said quite poignantly, I quote, "Their mental health deterioration is not just about inside, but it's related to their outside hardships." And so that's one thing that we really want to make sure is emphasized as a finding of this research. And going forward, when mental health is being looked at in armed conflict, is that we don't forget those experiences.
And so you've got all this information. What's going to happen next in the project, I suppose?
Yeah, so we're finishing up our data collection and analysis at the moment. And we're going to turn to focus on our research outputs. We have an ambitious collection planned. We have a wide range of written outputs, including academic articles. I hopefully, all being well, have an article that will be released in summer around what I've just explained on mental harm and this legal loophole and the decolonial approach.
Yeah.
We're also planning policy briefs that will be directed to policy makers and actors, potentially armed groups and armed actors, and an edited book.
All right.
We also are launching this year our Beyond Data Hub. So this speaks to the quantitative aspect of the research, which I've not explained in much detail because we have a very dedicated quants team within the BCC. But in a nutshell, they are working on creating an open access historical quantitative database that links international legal violations with experiences of harm and need. We also have other multimedia outputs coming out, including
this podcast.
including this podcast. We have digital stories. We have a 2D mobile game.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
A mobile game?
A mobile game. I believe it's called a serious game.
Right. So you play the game and you learn about the project.
Exactly. It's about...
I'm a bit scared what this game's going to be, actually.
It's trying to shape behaviour change and build or bridge capacity. So we've had a variety of co-production workshops with our case study teams, with local researchers to see what would be most beneficial and how we can encourage behaviour change through gamification.
Game. That's interesting. I want. Is that something that you in the law department do in the law school do? Because we don't do that in health sciences. But it's quite an interesting output from research.
Yeah, it is. Produce a game.
Yeah.
Oh,
or is that just a new thing for this
It's the
project?
first time I've been involved in a game, but there have Dr. Rebecca Sutton, who is on one of our co-eyes based at Glasgow. She is leading on the game, and she's been involved in previous games. Ceasefire is the previous game that she has, which I believe is out now.
Out now,
really?
Available
We
now.
can find it.
And soon we will have the Beyond game.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely play it, won't we?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We'll look out for that.
We also have our own podcast.
Oh, do you?
Oh, really? You
great.
didn't tell us this, really?
Called Beyond Compliance in Conversation.
Oh, excellent. Well, everyone, go over and listen. If you want to hear even more in, I'm sure, more detail and yeah,
yes,
go and listen to the podcast.
You can access it wherever you usually access your podcast.
Yeah, just listen to it straight after this one. Go and find it.
Available on all major streaming platforms.
She's got plug it. She didn't tell us she was going to do a plug, obviously.
I know. Can you plug us on your podcast?
Please. Yeah.
We also have a research line aspect of our project where we deliver early research findings directly to the FCDO, who is our funder.
Who's the FCDO?
The Foreign Commonwealth Development Office.
Okay.
Wow.
Where we can provide them some advice based on early research findings to hopefully inform their policy on certain international relations and engagement with our case study countries on conflict.
Fantastic.
So although we're 2/3 of the way through, I think this is still just the start of this incredibly important research into mental harm in particular. And I hope that we can secure funding to continue to explore how we can better prevent mental harm in conflict. I think there's a need for research to map trends in the types of mental harm that are experienced in war, whether those correlate to certain tactics of war or certain uses of weapons, so we can get a better idea of this mapping, this understanding how mental harm is experienced, so it can be foreseen better and therefore mitigated against in decisions of attack during armed conflict.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a really big area. I'm surprised there hasn't been more research in this, and it sounds like there definitely needs to be more that hopefully will come up about after yours.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd like to see some continued research along these lines in the future.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll look out for the results of the project. I'm definitely going to look out for this game.
Oh, definitely.
Excited about that. But,
and the project, of course, obviously.
And of course the project.
The game comes first. And your paper.
Yes.
Your paper,
and the book. Wow. So there's lots coming out of it, which is really exciting.
It's going to be a busy year.
You're going to be very busy, yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. And something a bit different for the research room, but really, really interesting.
It's been good. So you've seen this lovely hat.
Lovely.
Staring at you. Well, we've got to ask you a few questions. Pull these questions out of the hat. I'll let Lucy go first.
Okay. Would you rather have to present your research findings entirely in rhyme or using only interpretive dance? Your very serious findings.
Oh, wow. I think I'm going to go interpretive dance. I feel like it could be really powerful.
Oh, it could.
Like a silent room.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And rhyme would almost make it too lighthearted.
Yeah. No, you're
like
right.
Right, actually. Yeah.
I think an interpretive dance, it could be.
Bit of moody lighting.
Yeah, I'm imagining it dark and powerful and really emotional. Well, I think we should get this.
And of course, she's got acting skills as well.
And with your background in theatre.
Yes, yeah.
Perhaps you could make it happen. Right, I'll look out for that as well. Alongside the game, we'd like an interpretive dance, please.
What's the strangest question you've ever been asked about your research?
Probably the one you just asked me. I was thinking or a dance.
Yeah, that's fair, I think.
Yeah.
Another silly one. If your research had a catchphrase, what would it be? Do you have a sort of motto that you might say a lot?
I think if I was to focus on the mental harm area, so my specific research, it would be, and I don't want to take credit for this because it is a title in a very great journal article from a fantastic author, Beyond Life and Limb.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So credit goes to Lieblich for this one, but Beyond Life and Limb.
He wrote the paper.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Oh, very good. I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Beyond Life and Limb.
Beyond Life and Limb.
And it sounds quite profound as well.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, what's one thing you wish you knew earlier?
Ooh. I think working in armed conflict can be quite burdensome and quite heavy.
Yeah.
So I
can
think
imagine.
perhaps a bit more knowledge of that at the beginning of the project
Yes. Yeah.
might have been better going in a bit more prepared.
Yeah. Well, I suppose living in Cambodia,
Mhm.
that would have maybe helped a bit, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, for the fieldwork element as well.
Yeah.
It's nice to be back in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've traditionally worked on human rights, more fundamental freedoms like freedom of expression and association, and working on armed conflict. It's a bit more intense.
Definitely.
Darker, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
definitely a bit of a heavy topic. And I suppose you probably have to look after your own mental health quite a lot as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. What was your dream job as a kid before you knew that, well, international human rights lawyer was an option?
Honestly, an actress.
Oh.
Well, I think there's quite a lot of parallels between law and acting.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, the public speaking element of it. You've got to be able to
That's true, I suppose.
empathise quite a lot as a lawyer, and that's something you kind of learn through acting.
I suppose if you're in a courtroom, you can be a bit dramatic.
Like a barrister
can't you?
is just another kind of actor.
Yes,
surely.
Yeah, exactly.
This is me trying to justify the little girl inside me that I am acting. Look at me now, there's a microphone.
But you do act though, don't you?
I do some amateur dramatics
Yes.
on the side. Yes, I do.
Yeah, we have to get that in. I'm so impressed with this. I mean, you don't expect a human rights lawyer to be singing and dancing on a stage.
I think you need the balance between
yeah.
the heaviness, especially working on armed conflict, and then the joviality and the fun that comes with being musical theatre.
Yeah, an actress.
You're an actress.
I think that's great. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming in. That was really, really interesting. I think we've learned loads.
You've learned loads.
I have. It's
been
a whole new world that I'm going to
And
go and learn
entertaining
about.
as well.
Definitely. Yeah. So thank you so much. And we'll put some information down in the show notes. We'll put maybe a link to where people can learn a bit more, and a link to the podcast. Definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you both for having me. It's been excellent.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome back anytime.
With your game.
Yes. Game in hand.
With the game. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to like and follow The Research Room wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to leave us a review, that really helps other people find the podcast.
Does it?